Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om, peace, peace, peace. And good evening. We are going to be looking at Gyana Yoga today in Swami Abhedananda's complete works. We've just finished the other three yogas, so we're going to go on to Gyana Yoga. And to start it off, we're going to start with a song that was written by one of our devotees many years ago. And if this sounds like something from the 70s, that's because it is. It's called We Are One, We Are One. That was We Are One from the album by the same name. And it goes along with Gyana Yoga because we're going to talk about how everything is really one. Everything is from the ones. So, Alma, would you give us a paragraph or two here?
This is Chapter 7, Gyana Yoga. The last is Gyana Yoga, the path of wisdom. The word jnana, being derived from the Sanskrit root gyan, to know, means knowledge. The ideal which it holds up before its followers is the realization of that absolute truth, which is the one common source of all subjective and objective phenomena in the universe. It teaches that there is one life, one being, one reality, that all notions of distinction and differentiation, all beliefs in the permanent duality or multiplicity of existence are unreal and illusory. Gyana Yoga is based entirely upon the monistic principles of the Advaita or non-dualistic system of Vedanta. Its purpose is to show that subject and object are but the two expressions of one absolute being or substance, that God and man, the creator and the created, are only different aspects of one universal reality. Its aim is to resolve the diverse phenomena into one ultimate being, from which proceed all powers and all forces manifested in external and internal nature, and which is the abode of infinite intelligence and eternal happiness.
Yes, you see, everything comes from Brahman, and when you hear some of these philosophical debates about that matter is everything and we're going to get consciousness out of matter, or that consciousness is everything and we're going to get matter out of consciousness, the trouble is they both arise from Brahman, not one from the other. Brahman is the ultimate substrate of the universe, not matter, and actually not. Consciousness is an aspect of Brahman, so it's existence, consciousness, bliss. So it's one of those aspects of Brahman. But they both, what we think of as consciousness, are limited consciousness, and the material world arise from them. Subjectivity and objectivity arise together from Brahman. And the best explanation of that I've ever heard was to compare it to the Escher painting. Escher is the one that did all those phenomenal sketches where staircases look like they're going up, but they end up right back where they started, even though they always look like they're going up, and all sorts of other kind of conundrum types of pictures. And he had one of two hands. He had two hands, each one had a pencil, and this one was drawing this hand, and this one was drawing this hand. And so that's what's happening here, is that you have a tangled hierarchy. And that was the way a quantum physicist named Amit Goswami described it. He says we have a tangled hierarchy. You cannot say that one came before the other because they both arose together from Brahman in the initial mistake of not seeing Brahman as one, but seeing it as two, and then ultimately many. So this is the basis of Jnana Yoga, and why we say that everything is one. So let's continue.
According to Jnana Yoga, matter, mind, intellect, sense powers, names, and forms are but the apparent manifestations of that one substance which is called in Sanskrit Brahman. They may appear to us as real, but they have, in truth, only relative reality. The phenomena of the universe are like the waves in the ocean of Brahman. As waves rise in the sea, and after playing for a while, once more merge into it. So the waves of subject and object rise, live, and dissolve in the ocean of that absolute substance, Brahman. Brahman is described in Vedanta as that of which all animate and inanimate objects are born, by which they live, and to which they return after dissolution. It should be known and realized by all. It is the essence of divinity. It is like the eternal canvas upon which the creator, or the cosmic ego, and the created, or individual egos, are painted by Maya, the inscrutable creative power of the infinite being.
Yes, and of course all of these things are within Maya, and that's why we can't say that Maya is real or unreal. Since things have arisen from Brahman, there's a reality there. The reality of Brahman is in everything, but the way we're seeing it is simply a temporary manifestation, and it's somewhat illusory in that sense. We're not seeing it quite the way it is, and so in that sense, it's illusory. So that's why we say it has aspects of both. It's neither real nor unreal, and yet it's kind of both real and unreal. It's inscrutable. And so that's the mystery of the Maya and Brahman. Maya is the power that Brahman has to manifest an apparent universe. It's like a holographic universe that has been conjured up by Brahman. All right, so let's continue here.
The chief object of Jnana Yoga is to unify God and the individual soul, and to show the absolute oneness that exists between them on the highest spiritual plane. The individual ego, being the reflection or image of divinity or brahman, is divine in its nature. And this true self is known in Sanskrit as the Atman. Knowledge of the oneness of the Atman, or subjective reality with Brahman, the universal truth, is described in Jnana Yoga as the only means of attaining to complete liberation from the bondage of selfishness and from attachment to body and senses, which are the causes of all worldliness, unhappiness, and misery. The light of the knowledge of the Atman, and of its oneness with Brahman alone, dispel the darkness of ignorance which prevents us from reaching the abode of absolute existence, intelligence, and bliss, which now deludes us into identifying the individual self with the body, senses, mind, and their modifications. This ignorance is designated in Sanskrit as avidya, or nescience. It is the source of all false knowledge, egotism, attachment to the lower self and to the world. Being deceived by the elusive power of nescience, or avidya, we mistake body for soul and soul for body, matter for spirit and spirit for matter. In ignorance of our true self, we work solely to gratify selfish motives and to reap some results from our actions. But Jnana Yoga would awaken us from this sleep of ignorance by showing us that the Atman is immortal, unchangeable, all-knowing, and free by its own nature from eternity to eternity. That through the influence of nescience, or avidya, the individual ego thinks of itself as changeable and subject to birth and death, and forgetting that the fountainhead of freedom, knowledge, and everlasting happiness is abiding within. It seeks knowledge and happiness from outside and becomes the slave of desires and passions.
Well, this is one of these paragraphs that reflects the infinite. So let me break in here. Just think of, here we are, this individual Atman, and we think ourselves as this body-mind complex, and we don't realize our oneness with Brahman. And when we face the ultimate death of the body, there's this fear, oh my goodness, I'm dying, you see. But think how silly it would be if we saw this nice little wave on the ocean, and then we saw it disappear, and we said, oh my goodness, the poor little wave's dying, you see. You see how silly that would be. Or if you saw a reflection of something in the mirror, and then as you moved slightly to one side, all of a sudden the reflection's gone. You think, oh my goodness, something's gone. Well, these things were just reflections or parts of the whole. And so for us, again, to identify ourselves with this limited body and mind that's just a reflection of the infinite or part of the infinite is equally silly. So let's continue here with this almost infinite paragraph.
It further reminds us that whatever we think or perform mentally or physically is like a dream in the sleep of self-delusion caused by the power of avidya. That these dreams of the sleep of ignorance can be removed neither by work, nor by devotion, nor by meditation, but by the light and power of vidya, the knowledge of the Atman or self and of its relation to Brahman.
Yeah, both of the Alice books are based on a dream. Alice, in both cases, falls asleep and dreams about these two worlds. In one, she dreams that she's gone through the mirror and she's gone through the looking glass, and now she's in this world where everything's kind of backwards. You know how in a mirror, if you looked at a book, all the words would be backwards and so forth. And so that's the gist of that particular story. And in that one, you have a game because there were chess pieces on the mantle in front of the mirror. And so when she goes through the mirror, all of a sudden those are now animated and become alive, and she's interacting with all these chess pieces. And then in Alice in Wonderland, she falls asleep, and she's just been seeing a little white rabbit go down a hole. So in her dream, she's following the white rabbit down the hole, and she encounters a world where there's a pack of cards, and the Queen of Hearts is raining terror over everybody and yelling, "Off with their heads, off with their heads." And the joke is that the king keeps pardoning them and nobody really loses their head. Well, both of those are wonderful metaphors for the nature of this world. We are dreaming this dream of this world, and we think we're going to die, just like we're going to have the Red Queen, the Queen of Hearts, behead us or something. But in actuality, once we realize our oneness with Brahman, that's like the king pardoning us finally, and we realize that we're one with God and we're not going to be beheaded. And at the end of that story, of course, Alice is frantically trying to run away from the queen, who's yelling, "Off with her head, off with her head." And she peeks through the door hole and sees herself sleeping. And she realizes that all she has to do is wake up, and and she won't have to worry about that wicked queen anymore. So that interesting metaphors that Lewis Carroll had there. We can see that he must have had some exposure to Vedanta philosophy. There are way too many parallels in those books to just be a coincidence. And if you read about his association with an interesting pastor of the time, that George MacDonald, he also had some very interesting Vedantic ideas that he was blending into Christianity. See, at that time, Christianity was really struggling to come to grips with the reality that you couldn't take the Bible literally. The geology and archaeology and all these other sciences were saying the world couldn't possibly be only 4,000 years old, and something had to be taken not literally in the Bible. So they were really searching. And of course, since Lewis Carroll was at Oxford in the logistic mathematics department, he would have had access to all sorts of intellectuals there, many of whom were studying the scriptures from India in translation. The British and the Germans were both actively translating some of these ancient scriptures and studying them. So it's very interesting to read those books with the idea of Vedanta in mind, and the more you look, the more parallels you see. But that's a whole other lecture. All right, so let's continue here.
This knowledge cannot be obtained as the result of any virtuous act or prayer. It comes to the soul when the intellect and heart have been purified by unselfish and righteous works, and when the individual ego begins to discriminate between the real and unchangeable, Atman and apparent and changeable matter of force. Jnana Yoga teaches that right discrimination and proper analysis are indispensable to the acquisition of knowledge of the true self and the reality which underlies phenomenal objects. It also declares that knowledge of the self will bring to the soul the realization of absolute truth more quickly than the practice of Raja Yoga or karma or bhakti yogas.
Yes, now of course you see he's in a chapter or a lecture about Gyana Yoga, and Swami Vivekananda wanted all of his monks in the order to be able to take any standpoint and argue it as though it was the only standpoint. And so he's taking that position here, that this is the ultimate. Now, of course, when you read some of the other yogas, you realize that Bhakti Yoga is the easiest, or Karma Yoga is the most practical, or Raja Yoga is the royal path and can be incorporated with all of these paths. So each one is in its own right a perfect yoga. But in this particular case, we're promoting Jnana Yoga, so we're going to be totally Jnana Yogis here and say it's the quickest path. It's probably the quickest if you can do it. The trouble is it's not the easiest. All right, let's continue.
The path of wisdom, therefore, is best fitted for those earnest and sincere seekers after truth, who have no leaning towards active life, who are not devotional in their nature, but are preeminently intellectual, and who, having realized the transitory and ephemeral character of phenomenal objects, are no longer contented with sense pleasures. It is for those who wish to be free from all fetters and attachments, and who care nothing for earthly prosperity, success, social honor, fame, or fulfillment of personal ambitions, but whose sole desire is to know who they are in reality, what their true nature is, and what relation exists between their soul, God, and the universe.
Yes, and I'm talking to interfaith classes, interreligious classes that are studying world's religions. I often start with the statement that religions are try to answer the question of what is the relationship between us as an individual, the universe, and some ultimate power, usually called God. So that really summarizes religion. Now, of course, Buddhism doesn't talk about God in that sense, but it still covers the same territory. And going back to Alice in Wonderland, when she meets the caterpillar, what does the caterpillar do but say, "Who are you?" Trying to get across this idea of who she really is and trying to make her look at that. And of course, Alice is just like most of us. She identifies with her body and her mind, and in this dream world, she's become very confused about her body and her mind, and so she's very confused about who she is. And so that's a very interesting insight that, again, Lewis Carroll had in that book, pointing out the mistake we have of identifying with our body and our mind. All right, let's continue.
The traveler along this path should be philosophical in tendency, should have a sharp intellect, and a keen power of analyzing the true nature of things. He should also have a firm conviction that the ultimate truth or reality of the universe is unchangeable. Using the sort of right discrimination between the self and the non-self, he should sever all ties and should never allow himself to be overpowered by any external or internal influence. His mind should be undisturbed by passions or desires, his senses be well controlled, and his body be strong, healthy, and capable of bearing all hardships, as well as of overcoming all environmental conditions. He should have dispassion and be ever ready to renounce anything that does not help in his realization of truth. He must have absolute confidence, the teachings of the Gyanis, yogis, or those who have become seers of truth by following the path of wisdom. And he must likewise have faith in the final truth expounded by the monistic system of Vedanta.
Yes, a couple of days ago I was giving a talk to the Las Vegas study group, and it was on spiritual healing. And the essence of that talk was that really it's a kind of a gyana yogi path. You have to identify yourself with your true, unchangeable, perfect self, and try to have that manifest on all levels. Not only identify it with on the highest level, but feel that that highest level is then being reflected in the mental plane, the emotional plane, and the physical plane. And so to the extent that you can deny the problems of the body, the mind, and emotions, and identify with the true spirit, you find that many times that those problems will then begin to correct themselves, that you've become more aligned with that perfection. And that's really kind of the essence of many spiritual healing techniques, and Christian Science was very much like that as well, where they constantly identified themselves with the perfection. Let's see. So, oh yeah, and we talked about how there's some extraordinary examples, and I'm sure almost every one of us could think of a time when they really didn't feel well at all, but they had to do something, and somehow they could mentally block out the pain or the suffering or the disability that they had and do what had to be done then. Then afterwards, they probably, again, felt the pain and the suffering. But at least we can see the power of the mind to transcend suffering and pain when we really, really have to. I gave the example of my sister who, in her early days, used to sing concerts, and she would sometimes get migraines. And it was those debilitating kind of migraines where you'd end up throwing up and just being terribly ill. If she had to perform, she somehow transcended all that and just performed. And later she got sick, but she managed somehow to transcend that when she absolutely had to. And many, many times you find that people can do that. And there was an example that was told to us by our singing teacher. We had a teacher who taught several of the monks voice lessons for free back in the 80s. And he told of meeting a pianist who in his old age had become rather crippled with arthritic hands. But if he sat down and put his focus on his playing, the hands somehow magically became ungnarled from the arthritis, and he was able to perform because his whole mind had learned how to focus on the music, and somehow the hands cooperated. And after that, then the hands would become gnarled up again. Unbelievable, but he saw it with his own eyes. All right, so let's continue.
The mind of a beginner in Gyana Yoga must possess the power of perfect concentration and meditation. The soul must be filled with the longing for absolute freedom from all relative conditions and from the laws which govern phenomena. You must realize that even the enjoyment of heavenly pleasures is a kind of bondage, since it keeps the soul entangled in the meshes of phenomenal relativity. Being well armed with all these noble qualities as his weapons, the Jnana yogi should fight against phenomenal appearances. With the ideal of the unity of the true self and the absolute brahman ever before his mind's eye, he should march onward towards its realization, breaking down all names and forms with the hammer of right analysis and cleaving all ties of attachment with the sword of proper discrimination. Should he not stop till the goal is reached, he who goes through the path of wisdom burns the vast forest of the trees of phenomenal names and forms by starting in it the fire of right knowledge. All these names and forms are produced by Maya, the inscrutable power of Brahman. According to Jnana Yoga, this power of Maya is inseparable from Brahman, as the power of heating is inseparable from fire. The Jnana Yogi, in his search after Brahman, should reject all names and forms by saying neti, neti, not this, until he realizes the one, nameless, formless, and absolute being of the universe, where the subject and the object, the knower, knowledge, and its objects, losing their relativity, merge into the infinite ocean of blissful existence and supreme intelligence.
Yeah, so that's the basic idea of Jnana Yoga, is just to keep affirming your true nature, and that it's not the particulars, but it's the essence of Brahman that's behind it. Okay, let's. Do you want me to take a turn? Are you doing it?
No, go ahead.
Okay. A sincere seeker after truth should hear over and over again that the Atman, or true self, is one with Brahman, or the eternal truth, and should repeat such phrases as Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, Satchidananda Rupo Hum, I am one with the absolute source of knowledge, existence, and bliss. He should constantly think of the meaning of Tat Tvamasi, thou art that, and should devote his time to meditating upon this oneness until the light of Brahman illumines his soul, dispelling the darkness of avidya and transforming his ego into the essence of the divinity. Instead of worshiping a personal god like a bhakta, a gyana yogi should clearly understand the significance of all his attributes as given in the different scriptures, such as the creator or the governor of the universe. He is spirit, infinite, omniscient, all-powerful, unchangeable, true, and one. Rejecting the worship of the personal god as an act of proceeding from avidya, or ignorance of the divine nature of the self or Atman, he should seek that which is above all attributes and beyond all descriptions, which transcends the realm of thought and cannot be revealed by human intellect or understanding. Realize that all conceptions of a personal God are more or less anthropomorphic, and that the Creator himself must be phenomenal, since he can exist only in relation to the created object. A gyana yogi consequently does not pray to the personal God or to any other spirit or being. To him, prayers and devotions are useless and unnecessary. He does not seek any supernatural help or divine mercy, for he is conscious of the omnipotent and omniscient nature of the Atman, and knows that his true self is beyond good and evil, above virtue and vice, unlimited by all laws, and that it reigns over nature in its own glory. He feels that it is the same in essence as the Creator or personal God. Instead of identifying himself with body, mind, senses, or intellect, he always remembers that he is the Atman, which is birthless, deathless, sinless, fearless, immutable, eternally peaceful, and ever undisturbed by pleasant or unpleasant experiences, sensations, or mental and physical changes. A true gyana yogi constantly tries to keep himself above all phenomenal conditions and incessantly repeats, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, or Soham, Soham, I am he, I am he. He says within himself, I am neither mind, nor intellect, nor ego, nor senses. I am neither earth, nor water, nor air, nor fire, nor ether, but my true nature is absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss. I am he, I am he. He's actually going to be translating the 6 stanzas on Nirvana. So let's take a musical break here, and we'll listen to a song that's called Think You Are Free. It says, think you are free, and as free that you will be. I am pure, I am he, and so art thee. I am beyond all life and death, perfect am I, perfect are you. Realized souls see all as perfect. Think you are free. Again, it repeats some of the words. I am beyond all life and death. Where shall I seek for freedom? I am by nature free. You are in all, and you are all. I am beyond all life and death. Whom to avoid? Whom to take? Where shall I seek for freedom? I am by nature free. I am free, I am beyond all life and death. I am pure, you are pure. I am he, and so art thee. Think you are pure, and it is pure that you will be. Truth gives you strength, and strength leads to truth, and the truth is that you are the pure and blessed one. Now, this is one that I wrote, and it sounds like it was written in about 1750, And that's because good, clean monastic living makes you look a lot younger than you are. All right, so that was from the Vivekananda Oratorio. And we'll just take the last 5 minutes to finish up the 6 stanzas on Nirvana as translated by Abhedananda. Sometimes it feels a little less smooth than the one we're used to by Vivekananda, but it's interesting to hear a different translation. So would you like to continue?
I'm neither the organic activity, nor am I the elements of the body, neither the sense of knowledge, nor that of action. But I am absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss. I am He, I am He. I have neither hatred, nor love, neither greed, nor delusion, neither egotism, nor pride, nor vanity, neither creed, nor faith, nor aim, nor desire for freedom. I am the absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss. I am He, I am He. I have neither virtue nor vice nor sin, neither pleasure nor pain, neither scriptures nor rituals nor ceremonies. I am neither food nor am I the eater. I am absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss. I am He, I am He. I have neither death nor fear of death, nor birth nor caste distinction. Neither father nor mother, neither friend nor foe, neither master nor disciple. I am the absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss. I am He, I am He. I have neither doubt nor question. I am formless and all-pervading. I am the eternal Lord of nature, the master of the senses. I am neither bound nor free. I am one with Brahman. I am the omnipresent divinity. I am the immutable Lord of all. I am the absolute existence, knowledge, and bliss. I am He, I am He. Thus constantly practicing discrimination and rising above all relativity and phenomenal appearances, the gyana yogi realizes the absolute, unchangeable, eternal truth in this life. He ultimately comes one with it, because the gyana yoga declares that he who knows Brahman becomes Brahman. Brahmavid, Brahmava Bhavati. For the same reason that the knower of God can be no other than God himself, the Jnana yogi never forgets that his true self is Brahman. Having attained to the supreme God consciousness, he lives in the world like an eternal witness of all mental and physical changes. Ever happy and undisturbed, he travels from place to place, pointing out to mankind the way to absolute freedom and perfection. A perfect gyana yogi indeed lives as the embodiment of the absolute divinity on this earth.
All right, and of course, ideally, we like to blend the 4 yogas, so it's good to have a good grasp of each one individually so that we can learn to blend them. All right, so let's conclude tonight with a chant, and next week we will be doing karma and meditation, another lecture by Swami Abhedananda. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om, peace, peace, peace.